What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And today I'm looking ahead to the PFL 6 2025 show as the semi-finals carry on after last week's show. This is going down on June 20th, and it's in Wichita in Kansas in the Intrust Bank Arena. Now, I don't know if you're trusting that bank or not, but there you go anyway. A pretty good card here. I was obviously watched all the fights of the people on this before and previously, but going back watching a bit of tape again to prepare for this, there are a lot of fights on this card where I'm kind of saying to myself, right, I looked at the odds a little bit. I'm thinking, are those odds right based on what we looked at in the previous round? Because there was a lot of underdog wins in the PFL so far, and it's not gone to script, which is in the best possible way. You know, you wouldn't want a tournament like this to go to script. Well, no, it makes no difference, but the fact that it hasn't made it even better. So I wonder, will it continue like that, or will it go the other way? Now, the fights last week, I suppose, you know, could you argue all the favourites won? Maybe you can. So maybe this is where the people who are really well prepared for the first round got through the first round, and will, you know, the best will shine, and the real champion, who's, you know, maybe could have been picked out as the champion before the year, will beat the guys who maybe got the shock in the last round, and, you know, everything will return to the way it should be. But maybe not, and that's MMA really in a nutshell, isn't it? It's one of those sports where, you know, it's all well and good to, you know, give out your bets or give out your picks or whatever it might be, but at the end of the day, once that cage door closes, you never really know, do you? And we will break it down here, and I'll give you both sides of it, and, you know, I'll give you my pick, but, you know, my pick doesn't really matter. What really matters is how those both sides work out inside the cage, and it's very interesting when you see the format that the PFL has now. Obviously, not, you know, we've seen similar formats before, but they have a pretty good level of fighter who were all there to watch their last opponent, you know, either after they fought or before they fought. They knew from the night that they last fought who they were fighting next, when they were fighting them next, and were able to prepare for them straight away, and also knew who they were beforehand, you know. So, you know, if you, how many is it, 8 in each group, you know, it might be desperately hard. It might be very hard to prepare for all 8 people, let's put it that way, but it wouldn't be too hard to have a little bit of a look at every single one of them and not be shocked, you know, when you go that Monday morning after your last fight and are looking at a bit of tape. So it's MMA is notoriously not like that, you know, and that's not the case for the main event, which we'll talk about in a second. But MMA is notoriously like, you know, you get your opponent 6 weeks out, and it could be changed 6 days out, and all that madness. I know, not to say that this can't go the same way as we said. The main event has kind of gone that way, but in general, it's very interesting to see a thing play out like that, because like last year that wasn't really the case. You had a fight, you didn't know who you were fighting next, the matchmaking was then made, and then even after that, right, you might know who you're playing, or you might know who you're fighting next, but you don't know exactly who you're fighting next in terms of, it'll all be determined kind of on that night, and then, you know, we're semi-finals and finals and all, so it's a little bit different to what we have here, but I'm enjoying it, to be honest. I've said it before, myself and Mike talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I liked the old format, to be honest. I enjoyed it an awful lot, and fair play PFL, it wasn't working for them, and I think a lot of people maybe didn't enjoy it, and they changed it because of that. And, you know, I wasn't sure about it, but I like the new format as well. You know, which do I like more? I'd probably have stuck with the old format, to be honest, but that's just me. I think the way the events have happened so far, you'd almost be a fool to say that this isn't working better. I think this is working better, but and do you know what? I'm coming at it here from a purely sporting point of view. In terms of the fighters themselves, you know, the amount of fights they have to fight to get there and all of that, you know, it's this way definitely better, I think, and every fighter I've talked to prefers it this way. But from my selfish point of view, I might have preferred it the other way. But you know what? 6 of one, half a dozen the other doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. So we get into this week and we have a card that, you know, is kind of filled with tournament fights and filled with a lot of people who have, I suppose, a lot to, not necessarily a lot to prove, but a lot to gain in this weekend and you know, at this event. You know, the main event. It's hard to look at Kevin Lee and look at where he is at this stage of his career and not say this is a massive opportunity for him. You know, a guy that has been around for a very, very long time and has had some very, very good performances, has had some very, very bad performances, has had some good luck, has had some bad luck. But, you know, he is a guy that, if he can get it all together, and this, we're prefacing here for a second, right? If he can get it all together, Kevin Lee can put it up to Gadzhi Rabadanov. If he can get back to his wrestling game that we saw years ago, you know, if he can get that power that he has, you know, and he doesn't have the most knockouts in the world, but he has, you know, a lot of submissions and stuff as well. But if he can get back to his best, and he's only 32 years of age, right? He has a real chance in this fight. But last week I talked about Kamaru Usman in the UFC, and I thought there was like, I didn't think there was a massive chance, but he wasn't that far away from it. You know, his last fight against Chimaev, he did very well in that fight. The two losses before that, you know, obviously one was a shock knockout in a fight he was winning. The other fight went to a majority decision. There was a chance. When you look at Kevin Lee, even though he won his last fight against Thiago Oliveira at Lights Out Championship 17 back in September of last year, and he won it fairly quickly, I went back and I watched the Ekaterina fight, and that was in July of 2023. So, you know, almost the 1st of July, so almost 2 years to the day. The two knee braces on that day, he didn't look as himself. He didn't look fast. He didn't look explosive. He didn't look like Kevin Lee once looked. You know, we all remember that Gregor Gillespie head kick KO. Like, he didn't look like that day. Now, again, it was only 2 minutes in the last fight. He did look a bit better, but how much can you tell really from that fight? I think a lot of this will depend on like how much Kevin Lee has healed up, maybe how much. And I don't know. I look, as a guy wears two knee braces, you're going to think maybe he has knee issues. I don't think that's beyond the scope of responsible journalism ranting here, right? Like, maybe they got better. Maybe they're at a different level now. He's had a fight camp behind him, what, about 9 months ago or so, 9 months since his last fight. How much better is he feeling? If he feels really, really well, you know, maybe we'll see something else from Kevin Lee. But I'm saying that in more hope than expectation. I don't expect it to be vintage Kevin Lee. And I'll tell you in a minute what I suppose I do expect. Just on Rabadanov, Jesus, you know, I talked about watching tape. This guy, I don't know, is there a fighter in the world, and this is maybe a big thing to say, but a fighter in the world that I watch and I'm as impressed over than Gadzhi Rabadanov. This guy is so good, like, just unbelievable. Like, I think I said it in the last preview as well, but watching back one of his fights today, Dan Hardy described him as the supreme technician. And he's absolutely correct. Like, his technical ability added to his timing makes this guy just unreal. Like, his jab is amazing. Like, sometimes you be watching fights and one fighter or both fighters are fainting, and you're like, you know, what are they really fainting for? What's this achieving? Like, his feints are so well timed, and like they look like he's throwing a shot, and the opponents bite on him. And like the right hand that comes behind a lot of those feints or comes behind the jab, he's just so brilliant. And the timing as well at the takedowns, like, unbelievable. This guy is an unbelievable fighter. And then, like against Shakesi last time, 32 seconds in, catches him with a shot and absolutely puts him away with a 1.5 more maybe on the ground. You know, knocked out Brent Primus, took him down, and almost got you. Well, I wouldn't say almost got choked, but Brent had him in a choke, got through that. So if you're thinking about it and you're Kevin Lee, about taking him out on the ground, it's going to be really, really tough as well. Like, he hasn't lost a fight since 2020, and before that it was 2016 when he was, a young pup, and he lost 3 fights early enough in his career, but apart from those 3 fights, he's only lost once in his last, what? I'll count them for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 fights. He's 18-1-1. He had a draw in the very first one. So in the last 19 fights, 18-1. And like, he hasn't been fighting bums either. Been in there with Steven Siler, Bobby King, Koji Takeda, Solomon Renfro, Elvin Espinoza, Michael Dufort, Brent Primus, Marcia Casey in the last one. Like, this is the best of what they have, I suppose, outside of the UFC. And this guy, like, he's obviously from the Abdulmanap school as well, over in Dagestan. Sometimes we look at fighters and, like Patchy Mix a couple of weeks ago. I watched the Magomedov fight, and I'm thinking, Bautista might have success if he can drag him into a similar fight, right, where Patchy's not getting takedowns and all of that, and there are issues, and you see with all fighters and all different promotions. But if there's, and maybe not just one fighter, but let's just keep it to Rabadanov specifically here. If this guy went into the UFC right now, in the lightweight division, the only guy I think that I would strongly pick over him, even then, is probably Ilia Topuria, because I think Ilia Topuria is probably the best pound for pound fighter in the world. I think he's that good. Rabadanov he's a special fighter. He is a special fighter, because like, his striking is as good as his wrestling. That's the thing about him, like that jab and those feints and all. And to get to how I think this fight will go, I think he's going to destroy Kevin Lee. Honestly, if Kevin Lee comes out there at 100%, looking like Kevin Lee from 2013 or whatever it was, I think he'll still destroy him. I think Rabadanov is just absolutely brilliant. He's without a shadow of a doubt my pick. He's a big price here as well. He's minus 1,600 best price, and I think that's right. I think he'll win this fight pretty comprehensively. Let's move on and talk about the other lightweight semi-final. There's actually, funny enough, there's another lightweight fight on this as well. Archie Colgan against Mansour Barnawi, and this is a bit odd. This is the number 1 contender fight in the lightweight division with the title currently held by Usman Nurmagomedov, another top fighter. And PFL put out a thing the other day basically saying, this is a number 1 contender fight, and the winner will fight Usman Nurmagomedov. A lot of my countrymen were not very happy about that, thinking that Paul Hughes is next in line. I tweeted it out. I kind of reported it, and Jonathan Coachman said the exact same thing at last PFL, that doesn't necessarily mean Paul Hughes won't be next. So the winner of this fight will either fight Usman or Magomedov next, or will fight the winner of Usman or Magomedov versus Paul Hughes, whether that's Paul Hughes or Usman or Magomedov. So that could have been more clear. I think PFL probably acknowledged that right now. So there you go. Just on that fight, first of all, I'm kind of amazed as well that Barnawi has had a lot of trouble. Amazing he's fighting at the moment. What's going on, I suppose, there in the background. But Colgan at 11-0 is such a talented guy. His wrestling is on point, but he's getting his striking together and all around. I think he'll win this fight. Like, Barnawi has been one of those guys that at his best, he is really, really, really good, but I don't think we see it often enough, especially at, I suppose, at this level. And I think Colgan is just going to be too much for him. It's an interesting fight, though. And, if Barnawi turns up at his best, he can definitely win the fight at plus 200, but at minus 250, or plus 210, even minus 250, I think Colgan is definitely going to be the pick there. But the other lightweight semi-final is Brent Primus and Alfie Davis, and I'll tell you what, this is a fight to be excited about, because this is 2 guys who are not your usual, jab, right hand, takedown type fighters. Both of these guys are wild men in different ways. I've been a big fan of Alfie Davis for years, and it's funny, he's 33 now and 18-5 on. I always look at him kind of as a young fighter, because I watched him, I suppose somewhat in his early days. I watched him in Cage Warriors, and then, fighting in Bellator, and a few of those Irish cards. He fought Daniel Scatese in Bellator 217, and got some great wins along the way, like beat Akon Wanless, who's a really highly touted prospect at one stage. Came up short against Alexander Shabley then next time up, but bounced back and won 3 in a row after a draw with Tim Wilde. Lost to the aforementioned Barnaby, but then beat Clay Collard back in April in the first round of this. And then Brent Primus, like, what a run he had last year, beating again the aforementioned Clay Collard, Renfro, and Miranda, before losing to the again aforementioned Gadzhi Rabadanov, which they all do. Beat Vinicius Cincy, who's on this card as well. Game guy. Looked, I was impressed with Cincy on that, and he's fighting Antonio Caruso on this card as well. That's a pretty good fight. I'm sure if one of them could get an impressive win there, they might be in the backup conversation here. But for the Davis Primus fight, like, I was very interested to look at the price of this and see Primus is a -205 favorite, plus 158 for Davis. You look at Davis's record, and he's only been submitted once in his career, and that was, it was Barnaby 2 fights ago, absolutely. And he's a demon on the ground, there's no doubt about that. As is Primus, but I think Primus will catch him in a different sort of way if he does catch him. More tricky, more like, set him up tactically more than anything else, if you get me. Whereas, I think Davis is going to be wanting to keep this fight on the feet. That knockout, the spinning back fist against Clay Collard, spinning back elbow even against Clay Collard the last time, was absolutely fantastic. One of the knockouts of the year thus far. And, like, as an underdog pick here, I haven't recorded the betting show yet, but I'd say he might be up there as one of the underdog picks for this week, because there's no doubt about it. This guy is one of those guys that he can, he's the type of guy you could put him in there with a Rabadanov or someone like that, and he'd be a -500 underdog, and he might lose 2 rounds, and then he'd end up throwing a wheel kick or something and knocking him out. He's just one of those guys, and that doesn't mean to say he couldn't 3-round decision a guy like Brent Primus. In fact, that might be my pick, to be honest, in this fight. Like, Primus is going to have to prey on the wildness that Alfie Davis loves to partake in. Like, if Alfie Davis spins on something, catch him around the back, pull him down, take the back, get in the hooks, get the rear naked choke. And now that I say that, I feel like that might be a way that fight actually ends. I could very, very, very well see that. But having said that, I'm just going to go with Alfie Davis as the pick, but not with any great authority at all. I think this is a real pick-em fight. I think, again, the betting odds are a little bit apart. I wouldn't have it. I'd probably have it -110, to be honest. I think it's that close. Primus, as always, is dangerous on the ground, but Alfie Davis on the feet is absolutely no joke whatsoever. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. I just think this is going to be, there's something mad is going to happen in this fight. And I can't wait to see it. Right. So let's talk about, there's 3 weight classes on this card. So let's talk about the women's flyweights next, and Liz Carmouche against Elora Dana. Do you know what? I just went back and I watched Elora Dana's last fight in the PFL against Diana Avskarova. She knocked her out with 12 seconds. Sorry, she submitted her, and basically knocked her out before that with 12 seconds left. This is her first fight in the PFL after she had a few fights in Jungle Fight and in Mega Fight Championship as well. She's 26 years of age. Actually, she's turning 27 next week. In fact, happy birthday to Elora. And by God, I was so impressed with her. Like, I look back at my last, I watched a few fights before the last fight, and I wouldn't say I had her wrong, but I think the fighter she is now to the fighter she was, fighting out in Brazil, she'd only one fight in 24, and it was a few fights in the first half of 23 before that. So she's only had, like, between the last fight and 2 fights before that, it's basically 2 years. She has changed and worked on her game and improved an awful lot. Like, I described her as a brawler who stood in the pocket and kind of waits for you and unleashes, you know, big shots. And some of what I said the first time was right. She has KO power, she has nice trips and all that. But in that Askarova fight, she looked amazing. Like, the lead hand was beautiful. She cut off the cage so well, landing heavy shots. You know, she's really athletic, like, look fast and look powerful. I think the only place maybe, and this tends to be the issue with younger fighters, looked a little bit green maybe defensively, and no one kind of, you know, knowing when to hold them, knowing when to fold them, basically. You know, you get into the pocket and you stay there, and, like, sometimes you're better off, let's get back out and let's start this motion again. That's, I think, probably her biggest issue. But again, that's something that could have been cleaned up going in here. It'll have to be against Liz Carmouche. What a run. Like, 41 years of age, 23-8, 16 finishes in there. And you have to say she looked as good as ever against Elora Joanna. Like, I remember before that she talked about she had new training and new nutrition and stuff, that she never really did it properly before it. You know, sometimes fighters say this, and I tend to think a lot of the time fighters, you know, maybe the early days of their career didn't maybe have the best nutrition or nutritionist, and then, like, maybe they change and now they're thinking, oh, this is really brilliant, but the last one was good. I believe her, to be honest. And you don't have to just believe her. Look at the shape she was in. She, like, at what did I say, 41 years of age, she looked faster, stronger, just a whole lot better in that last fight. And I'll tell you what, I cannot wait for this fight. Carmouche is a big favour, you know, upwards of minus 335, plus 332, plus 320, sorry, for Elora Dana. I'm seeing here best price. I'll tell you what, that might be a good flyer if she goes out a little bit more, because Dana can win this fight. But I'll tell you what, if Carmouche, it was only a minute and 25 seconds against Elora Joanna. If she looks as good as that again and carries it through, she'll win this tournament outright, no problem. She'll beat everyone in front of her. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I don't mean to sound bad here or anything, you know, and no disrespect to Jena Bishop or Ekaterina Shakalova, and we'll talk about that in a second. I think this is the de facto finale. I think the winner of this wins it out. Like, Dana at 8-0, you know, it kind of reminds me of the Art of Ishak and Phil DeFries fight last week in KSW. Like, can the young beast of a striker beat, like, the old veteran? You know, Liz can grapple her head off as well. You know, she normally does that. You know, she there's no doubt about it. And I would be surprised if she didn't do that against Dana, try to pull her to the ground. But, you know, will it be the old head or will it be the young lion? I suppose we'll have to wait and see. I'm going to pick Carmouche. I think she deserves that respect. But again, if Elora Dana won this, I would not at all in one bit be shocked. Then we have Jena Bishop, as I mentioned, against Ekaterina Shakalova. Again, both winners from earlier on in the year. You know, an interesting fight. And, you know, good matchmaking that this is happening where it is, I suppose. You know, Shakalova is a tank, big hooks, big power, good takedowns, and good subs. I described her before, and I would say it again, bit Fedor-like, you know, old school, drag you to the ground when she needs to, but throw those big kind of flying hooks in between that. And then that's Shakalova. And then Bishop, all about the takedown, and more so even recently. You know, she needs to fight her way in better, though. Like that fight against it wasn't the Watanabe fight I watched. It was the I think it was Elena Kalanadu. Now that was a few years ago. She got caught a couple of times on the way in, and you know, that's an issue for her. Now again, maybe I misspoke there a minute ago. I said she kind of got more wrestle heavy. I don't think she got more wrestle heavy. I think she got more well-rounded, but her wrestling is the thing that she looks for more, if that makes any sense. And I think it's right. Like, I've talked about her before, and I talked about her striking and her ability on the feet. That's definitely improved. And you saw it against Talia Santos. She looked good there. It didn't last too long against Dakota Dicheva. You know, she wasn't able to get the fight to the ground for long enough to make it that big of an issue. But it's all well and good having improving strike and looking good there. Like, you need to do, and, need to do what brought you to the dance. Wrestle. Fight your way in a way a little bit better. Don't be going out there all day, like, trying to jab the head off your opponent and, outstrike him. Strike her away and get the takedown and let's rock, from there. And Shakalova at the other side of it then, at 27 years of age, having only lost to Aspen Ladd in her run in Bellator and the PFL, and, beat Juliana Velasquez last time out in fantastic fashion. I thought Velasquez might have another run this year, considering where she was in the bracket, but she absolutely did not. I talked a minute ago about the power that Shakalova has, and she's only one knockout, I suppose, in her 9 wins so far, and she has those 5 submissions to go on with the fader part. But a lot of that is, I think she used the power to get inside and then chokes people out. And she's only had 3 fights in the big leagues, let's say, so far as well. So maybe that will change with time. But again, if you're Bishop, will that ability on the ground from Shakalova not preclude you, but, hasten you? Jesus, that's great vocabulary there. Hasten you from taking her to the ground because you're afraid you get submitted, maybe? Maybe not, because I do think Shakalova, you see a lot of them, is when she, are all her wins, most of them anyway, rear naked chokes. A couple of guillotines and arm bars in there as well, but the last 3 all rear naked chokes. She likes to take the back and choke you out that way. This, is a relatively pick-em fight. I would say the betting on this, relatively close enough. Bishop is the favorite, minus 147. Shakalova plus 136. I was a big believer in Jena Bishop before, to be honest, and I don't know, I might kind of fallen out with that a bit. I'm going to change my mind. I've been wrong a couple of times. I'm going to go with Shakalova in that one. I'm going to go with Shakalova as my winner in that one. Maybe she will be able to get that submission after all. And into the bantamweights. If you were to tell someone before the year started that it'd be Justin Wetzell versus Mando Gutierrez and Jake Hadley versus Marcirley Alves, I think they probably, and I'd say definitely would not have believed you. But fair play to these lads for coming through. Justin Wetzell beat Kasim Kasimov. Went back and watched that fight, and what a performance he gave on. The same could be said for Gutierrez, who beat Newsy, obviously coming over from Europe, and finished him late in the fight with a rear naked choke after taking a lot of shots in that fight. And this, again, is a very hard fight to, I suppose, to ascertain the winner of. Before we get into it, let's have a look at the betting odds, if I can find them here. So Wetzell is minus 210, Gutierrez plus 160 best price, which is, I suppose, is not unfair considering, he did take a lot of shots in that last fight. But first of all, on Mando Gutierrez, he's a southpaw, very, very attacking with his hook combos, eats jabs through the middle as Newsy can attest to. But he just keeps coming, even when he's hit, even when he's bleeding. I thought Newsy was, honestly, while watching that fight live, I thought he was going to catch him. I thought he was going to knock him out, but he was just more of a, in the words of Will Fleury, a raw bastard. And, sometimes he tries for the takedown, but his style, if you're to describe his style, is winging punches. When he got to the ground, though, he looked very good on the ground. Quick rear naked choke. BJJ looks very good. He's a good guillotine as well. He fought Raul Rosas back in the day and looked good in defeating that, but a bit underrated of a fighter, I think, to be honest. But Wetzell on the other side of it then, he's an in-your-face guy, big guy for the weight. Trains with Corey Sandhagen, and he's, kind of awkward, tricky style. Maybe not the best athlete in the world, but finds a way to win. Again, he is a good guillotine and good BJJ. And, I said before his last fight, he'll need to be a finisher. And, he didn't finish the fight and still won. That's correct, isn't it? That is correct. I'm like, let's check Sherdog there for a second. But very strong in the clinch, targets the body a lot, not afraid to throw. But you know what he does really well? When he throws his strikes, not afraid to throw, as I said, but then when it gets bad for him, let's put it that way, not overly bad, maybe he takes a strike or two, he's very smart at getting the clinch when he needs to get the clinch. And I think that is a way for him to stay in fights and make them longer, prolong them, when maybe, again, especially against a guy like a guy like Gutierrez here, he could possibly get overwhelmed because of the way Gutierrez fights. The pick here is going to be Gutierrez as the underdog. Having watched that last fight, my biggest issue here, I think, for Wetzell is will he be technically good enough to fight off kind of the madness of Gutierrez? Like, the way he fights, like, I wouldn't say Wetzell is a mad fighter. I think he's a brave fighter, and he's like maybe more agricultural, but effective in that way. Whereas Gutierrez is just mad bastard. Like, he just go for you and go for you and go for you. I don't know, does Wetzell have maybe the power to make him pay enough? Now, he's a few knockouts, 4 knockouts in his 11 fights in his career. You know, he's only got 1 submission, but he is a submission threat as well. You know, he got that a couple of fights ago. But yeah, no, I'm gonna go with Gutierrez to win this one. Even though maybe, you know, the form books and the level of fighters that he has beaten, maybe Wetzell might have him on that. But I'm taking the underdog. I'm going for Gutierrez. And probably, you know, I would argue the standout of that's a great fight as well. But the Jake Hadley versus Marcirley Alves fight is a real interesting fight. Jake Hadley, first of all, I've watched him again for a very, very long time. 12-4 in his career. You know, he fought my countryman Blaine O'Driscoll, who won the Irish Fighter of the Year 1 year, and he choked him out back in 2019. And he fought Shaj Hack, who obviously, you know, Cage Warriors champion. Luke Shanks, Cage Warriors champion, beat both of them, became obviously a Cage Warriors champion himself. Just a really well-rounded, good fighter. Really good on the ground, a lot of submission wins. You know, he got the Scottish Twister-ish in his last fight, and it was his first finish in a good while. You know, he finished Malcolm Gordon in his one of his UFC fights. Well, I was going to say his debut, but it wasn't. And he got a submission before that, but there was 4 decisions in a row, and that's not the type of fighter he is. You know, he beat Ken Lochran in one of them, and lost the 3 around it, and ended up getting cut from the UFC. And I think, again, himself and Galen Lochran a bit harsh on both of them, but luckily for the PFL, they have both of them now, which is great. And Alves on the other side of it, but God, I was fairly impressed with him. You know, in his first outing here, probably the shock of the tournament so far when he beat Leandro Higo. You know, southpaw, fast jab, accurate right hand. You know, controlled the pace so well against Higo, and just winging that left hand in, but thrown with intent. It's, you know, not like Gutierrez last time where he's just winging it for the sake of winging it. He's throwing it with intent. Now, knocked Higo down in the first round, showed good takedown defense, but also himself very, very good on top. Got a bit tired in the third. He's a basic enough fighter, but I mean that in the best way possible. He's so good at the basics. And I'm looking here, he's the underdog as well, plus 112. Hadley, minus 142. I think what Hadley has, and the advantage he has in this fight, is his athletic ability. I think he's a better athlete than a lot of people fighting. What I do think about Hadley, I think he's still kind of putting it together. I think he's still very young in his career. I would love to see Hadley maybe in 2 years' time, how good he's going to be then, you know, if everything keeps going the right way. But this is a pick'em fight. I really don't know who's going to win this fight. Like, Hadley's going to need to avoid that big left hand, and if he can, you know, he's never been knocked out in his career. If he can avoid it, it's, you know, he's on his way to winning. But at the other side of it, then, you know, Alves is not an easy out himself. Okay, he's been submitted twice, and maybe that's where Hadley looks at it, and maybe that's where he'll want to take this fight, and maybe that's where he'll want to finish it. But, you know, it's been a while since he got submitted, you know, in 2022. He's had 4 or 5 fights since then, went to decision with Hamadov and lost that one. We talk about him in a second as well. But I don't know. I really don't know. I'll pick Hadley, but not with any great certainty at all. This is one I'll be avoiding like the plague over on the betting show. So I'll pick Hadley. I think the submission, if he can get a takedown, you know, but Alves is good takedown defense as well. But against a guy as athletic as Hadley, if he can set it up well, you know, and he only needs one as well. So I'll stick with Hadley on that one. Right, that's nearly it from us. Just a couple more fights to mention. We mentioned a couple already. You know, I mentioned Hamedov there. He's fighting Magomedov. And jeez almighty, what a fight. What a fight that is. To not be a fight in the tournament, but, a backup fight. That is, it's pretty unbelievable, Magomedov, I think a lot of people are like, oh, patchy mix recently. But, I think Magomedov showed what he can do to a guy as good as patchy mix and deserves a lot of credit for that. But, watching a bit of Hamedov again before we started there, by God, this guy is a beast. But a lot of takedowns and a lot of, a lot of stuff and he fought Marcirley Alves actually last time out. Now I watch back that fight. And, Hadley probably watching that again and seeing maybe I can take him down as well. But a lot of stuff in that fight and in other fights that you're thinking, can he do that against Magomedov? Similar to Patchy Mix. Again, I'm throwing out a lot of we'll see on was it Friday night or whenever it is. But you know what? We better check that. So Friday is the 20th and this is on the 20th. There you go. I just think Hamedov might win the split decision again. This is going to be close. I think it's going to go all the way and very, very interesting as well. We mentioned Caruso and Cincy. Madison Darion's an interesting one as well. That Darion looked a real good fighter last time. I saw him fighting Dominguez as well. He looked good. He's fighting in the welterweight division against Nicholas Meck in a showcase fight. And then we also have Elora Joanna going to be a backup fighter against Seria Corzo on this one. The fight I want to look at though is my compatriot Dara Kelly's fighting Mike Hamill. This fight is changed, I think, in the last while, coming in short notice. Is Mike Hamill, and it's a tough enough fight for Dara Kelly here. I believe this is his third different opponent, and Dara is one of those guys. We talk about athletes. This guy is a beast of an athlete, and this fight is happening in the lightweight division. Dara's kind of moved lightweight, featherweight, but I think he's way better as a lightweight. He beat Dmitry Hitchenko last time out in a really good win, really good performance. And you know what I love about Dara? I watched one of his fights once, and I think it was the Zelle Zegers fight, and it wasn't his best performance now. And maybe it was the Kai Stevens fight. It was one. It was the Kai Stevens fight. And he didn't, it was only his second fight. He didn't fight brilliantly, but he won the decision. And, sometimes you think the guy in the second fight, they'll come back and they'll be like, oh, brilliant, onwards and upwards. He was as disappointed as anyone in that whole arena. And he won. That's a winner to me. And he's only looked better since, again, such a good athlete, big and strong. Very good wrestler, doesn't have a whole load of knockouts yet in his career, but they'll come. And Mike Hamill, some test for him, because Mike Hamill is strong as well. Maybe not as big. Dara's 6 foot. Mike Hamill is only 5'7", but a really good wrestler. And he's been in there with some good guys. Well, beat Nick Brown, the former champion over in LFA. I'm not mistaken. Beat Bryce Logan, Killis Mata as well. He's only lost to really good guys. Like his last 3 losses are to Tim Wilde, Usman and Magomedov, and Adam Barrocks. All top guys there. So. Not a guy past his prime either at 32. A real test for Dara Kelly. But I'll tell you what, if Dara Kelly wins that fight, I'd be very surprised if the PFL weren't going to push him and put him in a tournament next year. We had a few Irish fighters in this year. Obviously, Kieran Clark had an injury, and very unlucky for Carl Moore as well. And Nathan Kelly, obviously, tough timing, I think, for Nathan Kelly. I'm making excuses for everyone here, but anyway, go with me. But I think Dara Kelly is one definitely to keep an eye on, and that's a very, very good fight there on Friday night. All right, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in. Check out PFL over in America. Check your TV guides. ESPN Plus, I believe, isn't it? It's on DAZN here. Actually, funny enough, if you're in the UK or Ireland, and you have Sky TV, DAZN have an app. You probably know this already, but if you don't, they have an app, and the quality of the DAZN app on Sky rather than on your smart TV or whatever is way, way better. So that would be my advice. You download the app on your Sky. It's free and all that. You have to obviously sign up for DAZN, but tip there, you get a way better performing app and a way clearer and better picture and all that. So that is it for me. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this, please tell a friend. Tweet out the video. Give a subscribe, leave a comment. Who's your lock? Who's your lock of the night? Who's your best pick? Let me know in the comment section below. And please subscribe, like, and all of that. But we'll be back with a post show as well, breaking all the news down, and we'll be back with a preview show next time for the next PFL as well. But until then, my name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.